In the ancient land of Egypt, where the Nile flows like a ribbon of life through golden sands, lived a young woman named Miriam. At 18, she carried herself with the quiet dignity of her ancestors, her dark eyes reflecting both the wisdom of the ages and the innocence of youth. Miriam lived in the bustling town of Minya, where ancient Coptic churches stood alongside modern buildings, and the call to prayer echoed across stone streets that had witnessed centuries of history. Her family's small house sat near the market square, where the aroma of fresh bread and spices filled the morning air. But Miriam carried a heavy burden. A trusted religious leader in her community had betrayed that trust, leaving her with child and then pressuring her to end the pregnancy to protect his reputation. The weight of shame and confusion pressed upon her shoulders like the desert wind. On a night when the moon hung like a silver coin over the pyramids in the distance, Miriam tossed restlessly on her simple bed. In her dreams, she found herself walking through a place of unbearable darkness and heat. Fear gripped her heart as shadows reached toward her with grasping fingers. But then, a brilliant light pierced the darkness. A figure approached her, radiant, peaceful, with wounds that somehow spoke of love rather than pain. His voice was like gentle rain after a long drought. "My daughter," he said, "I have plans for you and your child, plans for hope and a future. Do not be afraid. I will make a way where there seems to be no way." Miriam awoke with tears streaming down her face, but for the first time in months, they were tears of hope rather than despair. Before dawn broke over the ancient land, while the world still slumbered, Miriam made her choice. Wrapping herself in her brother's old galabia and covering her head with a dark shawl, she looked like any young man heading to early work in the fields. With only a small bag of belongings and her grandmother's worn Bible tucked against her heart, she slipped from her family's house. The cobblestone streets were empty except for a few early vendors preparing for the day's market. Miriam walked for hours as the sun climbed higher, following dusty roads that led away from everything she had ever known. Her destination was Beni Suef, a neighboring village where she remembered seeing a small Coptic church with a wooden cross that caught the morning light. When Miriam finally reached the village, exhausted and overwhelmed, she collapsed near a small fountain in the church courtyard. Her disguise had long since fallen away, and she sat there, young, pregnant, and alone, with nowhere left to turn. An elderly woman named Mbutros was tending to her small garden of jasmine and roses near the church. Something in the young woman's posture, the way her shoulders curved inward like broken wings, called to her motherly heart. "Ya Habibti, my dear," Mbutros said softly, approaching with a cup of cool water. "What troubles bring you to our doorstep?" Through tears and halting words, Miriam shared her story. Mbutros listened without judgment, her weathered hands holding Miriam's trembling ones. "Child," the older woman said, "sometimes God allows storms not to destroy us, but to carry us to where we need to be. Come, you'll stay with me." 5 years passed like seasons of growth in Mbutros's garden. The search for Miriam had eventually ceased, and she had become woven into the fabric of the village community. When her son was born, healthy and beautiful, she named him Musa, after the great deliverer Moses, for she felt God had delivered them both. Little Musa grew strong in the village, his laughter ringing through the narrow streets as he played with the other children. Miriam found her calling working alongside the church's women's ministry, offering support and sanctuary to other women facing difficult circumstances. Word spread quietly through the network of villages about the young woman who had found refuge and now offered the same to others. Women facing impossible choices, abuse, or abandonment began finding their way to the small church in Beni Suef. Miriam's own experience became a bridge of understanding. She could sit with a terrified teenager and say, "I know this fear." She could hold a woman whose trust had been shattered and whisper, "I know this pain." Most importantly, she could look into despairing eyes and say with absolute certainty, "I know there is hope." The small church began to transform into a place of healing. Mbutros's garden grew larger, providing vegetables for the growing community of women and children who found temporary shelter there. The priest, Father Marcos, a gentle man with kind eyes, supported their ministry wholeheartedly. Years continued to pass, and Miriam's reputation as a counselor and protector grew beyond the village borders. She never sought recognition, but her quiet strength drew people like flowers turned toward sunlight. She helped establish safe houses, connected women with resources, and most importantly, showed them that their worth was not determined by their circumstances. Young Musa, now a bright and compassionate child, often helped his mother in her ministry. He would play with the children while their mothers spoke with Miriam, his innocent joy reminding everyone that beauty could bloom even from painful soil. One evening, as Miriam sat watching her son help Boutros water the jasmine plants, she remembered her dream from so long ago. The figure in the light had been right. He had indeed made a way where there seemed to be no way. Her child, whom others wanted erased from existence, had become part of a story of redemption and hope. Miriam's ministry continued to grow, touching lives across the region. She established partnerships with churches of all denominations, creating a network of support that transcended traditional boundaries. Her message was simple but powerful: every life has value, every woman deserves dignity, and God can bring beauty from the most broken circumstances. The young woman who had once fled in darkness had become a beacon of light for countless others. Her story spread not through grand proclamations, but through whispered conversations between women who had found hope when hope seemed impossible. And in the evenings, when the call to prayer echoed across the village from the nearby mosque, and the church bells rang their own ancient melody, Miriam would sit in Boutros' garden with little Musa, reading to him from the same worn Bible that had sustained her through her darkest hours. "Mama," Musa would often ask, "why do you help all these ladies?" Miriam would smooth his dark hair and smile. "Because, my beloved son, we were once lost in darkness, and someone lit a lamp for us. Now we get to be lamps for others." The jasmine bloomed sweeter each year, its fragrance carrying on the evening breeze like prayers of gratitude rising to heaven, a testament to the truth that from the most unlikely soil, the most beautiful flowers can grow. In this ancient land where the river of life has flowed for millennia, Miriam's story became part of a larger narrative, one of hope triumphing over despair, of courage conquering fear, and of one woman's faith becoming a wellspring of healing for many. Her legacy reminds us that sometimes our greatest trials become the very experiences that equip us to be ministers of hope to others walking similar paths.
Please lift up Miriam and her ministry in your prayers, and remember all who are facing trials. Share your prayer in the comments as a blessing to others. Like this video and share it with someone who needs God's encouragement today.